There's the subject. We're going to talk today about making the energy transition from fossil to renewable energy, and then a few words about electricity outlooks for this summer. Let me ask you to hold any questions until the end. I've got a bit to cover. I'm going to try to quit in time to have some discussion when it's over with. So let's, I always start with this chart. This is the why are we doing this chart. That's carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for the last almost million years across several ice ages. It wiggles between 200 or 300 parts per million, except now. We should be going into our next ice age, and that CO2 ought to be slightly going down, but it's not. It's going out the roof. Here's the last couple of hundred years worth. It was constant until the late 1880s, the end of the Little Ice Age. It starts up naturally at first, and about the time it gets past World War I, World War II, and into the 60s and 70s, it just takes off like a rocket, and that's clearly predominantly burning fossil fuels with some contribution from land changes. So anyway, the CO2 is going way up, no doubt about it. So yes, we have global warming. The temperatures are going up, both in the air and in the ocean. And they've been going up since the late 1800s, and they still are. And the issue, as we all know, is rising sea levels and extreme weather events and a few other things. So that's what we have to be concerned with. We've got accurate levels on the sea levels for 200 years now. And you can see that during the end of the Little Ice Age, the sea level was still dropping. It was taking water out of the ocean and putting it on the ice caps. And then about 1860 or thereabouts, the Little Ice Age ended, and it started to warm up, and the sea level started to rise, and it's been rising fairly steadily ever since. About 44% of that rise comes from melting ice. Greenland is the biggest source of that. 42%. See if that works any better. 42% is from thermal expansion. When the water gets warm, it expands, and that's causing 42%. And this isn't very well recognized, but 14% is what's called land water discharge, and that's coming from our pumping all over the world groundwater. We pump groundwater, we bring it up, we use it for different things, and most of it ends up in the ocean. And so our pumping groundwater is contributing also a little bit to sea level rise. Here, now we're going to get into temperatures. Excuse me. That piece of central England that you see there on the map has got accurate temperature recordings that go back to the 1600s. So that's our best thermometer-based data set in the whole world. And you can see what happens. It's, throughout the Little Ice Age, it was pretty constant. And when you get into about the late 1800s, it starts to rise. And it really took off here, maybe 1980-ish or so. It starts to take off quite a bit. So there's what global warming looks like from a thermometer standpoint. And here it is with the most accurate data. We've had a satellite since 1979 that's measuring the temperature of the entire globe. And so this is truly an accurate picture of global warming. And again, it's the same story. Through most of the 70s and 80s, it was relatively constant. We had a spike here and there. But when you get to about the 2000s and 2015, it really takes off. The peak of those red spikes in almost every case is an El Nino year. El Nino, of course, is a natural phenomenon in the Pacific Ocean, but it affects the global temperature. So you can see the result of it here. Now, in 24 and 25, it was much hotter than we would have thought it would have been. You can see that on this chart. We're not exactly sure why, but in 2022, there was a massive volcano in the Pacific that shot up more water than we've ever seen into the upper stratosphere. And it was water is a more potent greenhouse gas than CO2 is, by the way. And so the prediction was that probably contributed to a year or two of the warming. The school's still out on that, but that did happen in 23 and 24. So here's a summary. It's getting warmer, ice is melting, the ocean's rising, and that next sentence is something that you would not expect from what you see every day in the news. The facts are that so far there is no sign of an increase in severe weather events. Hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, floods, and so forth are not yet going up. I've got the charts to show you later if you're interested. The key word is yet, and all of the predictions say they might, so we clearly need to reduce our CO2 emissions. The story is not good on that regard. This is a chart that shows the CO2 emissions for the world. The United States and Europe have been making some modest reductions for the last, say, 20 or so years. Not as much as we need to make, but we might be making some. But China has taken off like a rocket, and India is coming along close behind. And you can see the entire world is up here, and we're still going up. Now, China is now more than twice the United States and more than twice Europe. There's been a lot in the news recently about China moving big time into solar power. And that's really good because they need to. And I thought you might like to take a little bit more look at China for perspective, given all the recent media story. They only began industrializing like in 1995. They had a really low electricity production, and as they've industrialized, it's gone up quite fast. Most of that has been from coal, and they also have really great resources for hydropower, building a lake with a dam and generating electricity when water flows out of the dam. So they've done a bunch of hydropower. And then in recent years, they've started to bring in wind and solar. Last year, China made nearly 60% of its power from coal. You compare that to the United States, we're going down in coal, but we still use a lot of natural gas. Natural gas is only half the emissions of coal, but it's still a fossil fuel, and it still has emissions. You can see that we're ahead of China for the moment on wind and solar. They are ahead of us in hydro, and they have lots more opportunity. You might be familiar with their Three Gorges Dam that they built a few years ago. That is still the largest hydropower station in the world, and they've got a lot more coming. We're big on nuclear, and as I'll talk more later, therein is our longer-term future, I hope, is in nuclear. Here's China. There's the growth, that's 24 and 25, the additions that they made in solar. That's very impressive. But what you don't hear much about is they're also growing in coal, and that's what this chart is. So in 2024, they built more coal generators than they have in their previous 10 years. And the amount of power that will be generated by that coal just about equals the amount of power that they're generating with wind and solar. And so it's really good that China is moving on solar, not much so on wind, but they're still building a lot of coal, and you can see the number of coal plants. They've got maybe 6 times as many as we do right now, and they're still going. Okay, here's the United States. Might not be able to see that too well, but that's our growth. There's coal. It went up for a while, and now it's going down. We brought in natural gas. That's the one right there. So we're now making gas. We brought in hydropower. We've been the same on nuclear for a while, and we've just started to bring in some renewables. This is a chart on renewables from 1950 to 2020. And you can see that we came up quickly on hydropower, and we're about all the lakes that we're going to have. We don't want to build any more lakes, so we're pretty constant with our hydropower potential. We started to burn some wood chips for a while and still do. That's not a good deal, I'll mention that later, but we claim it as being carbon free. And so that's been the same. And here comes wind and solar in the United States. Now, these are the areas of opportunity for making this emission reduction. And the big ones, which is really the low-hanging fruit, are over here in the transportation area and the electric power area. Transportation, it's primarily about moving to electronic vehicles. And in electric power, it's about moving towards wind, solar, and nuclear. There are some other things that are going on in these other sectors over here, but they're a lot more difficult. They're probably going to be a lot slower to happen. The real action is in EVs and in power generation. Here's the EV story. 1 in 5 new cars last year were electric. That counts both the pure battery electric cars as well as the plug-in hybrids. So it's both those two. 1 in 5 cars last year. More than half of those were sold in China. There's Europe and there's the United States and everybody else. Chinese people are a lot more willing to buy a really small electric car than we are. They're not selling a whole lot of Teslas in China, but they are selling a lot of small EVs at a low price. And maybe one day we'll decide that's okay for us too. And there's the electric story. That's probably going to slow down now for sure, because not only has this country, but also most of the countries in Europe just dropped their production and their investment tax credit for new electric vehicles. So there's still some credits, particularly in Europe, but we aren't offering that $7,500 anymore, and that will almost certainly slow down the new EV sales. So here's the things that we want to work on. Water and geothermal are both great carbon-free sources. So are wind, solar, and nuclear. A lot of the world thinks wood is also a clean source, but it is not. You make twice as many carbon emissions from burning wood as you do coal. And at some point in time, we're going to figure that out and probably back off. But for the moment, we're counting burning wood as clean, and so it's on this chart. So here's what it's going to take to move to clean energy. If you look at the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, it's a whole lot more solar all over the world and some more wind. And hopefully, and this is where we have to get to, but hopefully in a decade or so, around the world we'll see the advent of more nuclear power. And that's probably going to be in the form of these small modular reactors. I'll mention more about them in a minute. Here's the land use comparisons, which is pretty instructive, I think. That's the South Texas nuclear plant. It's basically a factory on a lake, and it generates an average of 2,400 megawatts. The largest solar plant in Texas right now is in Matagorda County. Danish Fields is the name of it. It just started up this year. It covers almost 5,000 acres, and on average, it produces 180 megawatts. This is a Google Earth diagram of the Buffalo Gap wind farm. And if you look at all those little lines of white dots that are growing there, each one of those dots is a windmill on a roughly 80-acre thing. That red line is 5 miles long, just to give you a sense of the size of a wind farm. And Buffalo Gap produces about 175 megawatts on average. So the point here is that doing both solar and wind takes up a lot more land than doing nuclear does. There's an available solution to all this. It's nuclear energy. But we haven't liked it at all. We've only built 3 in this country in the last 30 years. After 3 Mile Island was pretty well shut down. and all over the world after Fukushima being pretty well shut down. But just in the last year, you can start to see the traction coming as more and more people realize that if you really are serious about moving to clean energy, you must consider nuclear. And so it's starting to get some traction, but it's going to be a while before it comes to pass. Here are just some of the things that are happening. These are the big reactors. A couple of years ago, California was going to shut down their big nuclear reactor at Diablo Canyon. They changed their mind and they decided to extend the life of that reactor, so it's still running. It should have been down by now, but it's not, fortunately. Last year, Amazon bought a big existing nuclear plant in Pennsylvania and hooked it up to a data center. Last year also, Microsoft announced that they are buying one of the nuclear reactors at 3 Mile Island that was shut down in 2019, and they're going to restart that reactor at 3 Mile Island. Just this year, in Michigan, they announced that they're going to restart a nuclear reactor that was shut down in 2022. And they got $1.5 billion US loan to do that. So there's another one of the big reactors. These are in the 800 to 1,000 megawatt range that are coming back online. And in South Carolina, we were building 2 of those big reactors, and several years ago, it just got too expensive and was taking too long, so they just shut it down. And so those 2 units are sitting there about half built. And so there's some discussion going on right now about a company that might want to buy those half-built reactors and get them going again in South Carolina. So we've got some of the big nuclear reactors that may be coming back to life again. The real potential is in these small modular reactors. The idea here is that these are small units, 80 megawatts apiece. They're built in a factory somewhere, so you can just churn them out one after the other. Unlike building one of these massive nuclear plants on each and every site, you can move them by truck or rail to where you want them. Ideally, if you can find an old coal plant, you put them on that old coal plant. It's already a brownfield site, and all the wires are already in there that you need. So there's some good opportunity there. These things are totally safe. They're fail-safe. You lose the power, nothing happens. There's nothing but good things to be said about these small modular reactors, but they're not with us today. There are 3 of them operating in the world today. 2 of them are in China, and they're land-based, and Russia has one on a ship that it's got up in the Arctic Ocean somewhere. There are 4 that look like they're probably going to happen in North America. Some of them haven't started up yet, so that can change. But in Texas, down below Victoria by Seadrift, they've announced one, an 80 megawatt one that will ultimately be 4 of them, start up in 2030. Okla has one in Idaho that's probably 2030. Bill Gates' company, TerraPower, is building one in Washington State. It's 2030. And then up in Ontario at Darlington, they've got one that they're going to start up in 2030. There have been several more of them that have been announced by various companies, but they're all, in the early 2030s and beyond. So if you want to see what's happening, you want to watch these 4 right here, and hopefully in, 5 years, we might have one online in North America. If we could find some new technology that works in both geothermal and in batteries, a different form of batteries, both those could make a big difference. But it is potentially technology breakthroughs only at this point in time. The other thing that you hear people talking about is hydrogen. You can make that from renewable energy and electrolysis. You can make hydrogen, or you can make it the way we always have, which is out of natural gas, and then take the CO2 that comes out of that and capture that CO2 and pump it underground or some kind of way do away with it. The hydrogen ventures, there are several that are working right now, but I don't think it's very likely that they're ever going to end up big enough for a grid. They're small. Several years ago, we promised a $3 production tax credit, which was 3 times the price that it costs to make it by coal to try to, by natural gas to try to get these things. But that hasn't been implemented yet in the last 3 years, and it might not be. But probably the biggest thing that's working against hydrogen right now is AI. You all heard the story. I'm going to have a couple words about that in a minute. But right now, AI is out there grabbing every bit of power that they can find. And so if somebody that was looking to make hydrogen had their eye on some renewable energy, it's probably already bought out from underneath them by the AI people. So hydrogen might be good, but I actually don't think it's coming anytime soon. Here's geothermal. There is promise here. So this is what the temperature map looks like, 18,000 feet underground. And if you're in the orangey red areas, that's 200 degrees C at 18,000 feet down, and that is okay to make geothermal energy. Now, you've got to drill down to 18,000 feet. That's not easy. Most of the deep wells are in the Permian Basin in Texas, and they're 15,000-ish feet deep, so we can drill deep. We got to drill deeper, and we have to drill into much more difficult rocks from a drilling standpoint. California started up a brand new one maybe 3 years ago. They're lucky they're on an old volcano called Caldera. They only had to go 1,600 feet to get the hot rocks, and they've got 15 wells, and they're making power with it. So it's good if you're sitting on top of hot rocks, but everybody is not. Here's the big demonstration unit that we're going to watch. It's called Fervo Energy. They're building right now this unit in Utah. It's going to be the world's largest geothermal development unit. They got a bunch of new money to do it this year, so it looks like it's going to happen. And they're saying by next year, they're going to have 100 megawatts into the grid with this geothermal power. The idea is you drill 2 deep wells, way down, you do them sideways, 18,000 feet down, you frack both of them, and then you pump cold water down this well, and it goes out of the cracks, through the hot rock, heats up, and then is pumped back up to the top. Now you're pumping hot water out, and you make that hot water into steam and electricity. So the technology is really fairly simple. The difficulty is how's the drilling going to work down here? It's very hot, it's very corrosive, and it remains to be seen how well that's going to work. It's also quite expensive, and so this is a very important test case, and I'm going to say maybe in a couple of years we'll really have a sense of how good that is. And if it turns out that the costs are reasonable and you can actually successfully drill this deep, then we may see a lot more geothermal coming into those orange areas I showed you now. A big question. All right, here's another potentially big deal. This is a company called Form Energy, and they're building the plant that you see there right now, and it's supposed to start up next year. It's going to make these, they're called iron air batteries. Nothing to do with lithium, a completely different technology for making batteries. And basically, it's you take iron and you make it rust, and you generate electricity, and then you de-rust it and make a cycle out of that. So it's a rust, de-rust iron cycle, and you can use it for a battery. They're going to start the plant up next year, like I said. Here's their concept. They make you can see this guy squatted in front of a module that gives you a size perspective. So they package that module up, they put a bunch of them in a shipping container, they haul that shipping container someplace and line up a whole bunch of them on about 50 acres, and then they've got a 100 megawatt battery that will last for a few hours. They've got two very small demonstration projects with this technology underway right now. So this is another one of those areas that if this happens to work and be affordable, could make a big difference in the energy transition. We'll probably know in 2 or 3 years. There are other alternate battery technologies that could look good as well, but this appears to be the one that's got the best chance, and we're going to find out. They're spending $500 million on that factory right now. Okay, let's take a look at Texas. We are at an ideal spot for renewable energy. It gets really sunny in West Texas, and it goes all the way to California. And if you want to talk about wind, we're at the southern end of the Great Plains, and that's where your wind energy potential is. So Texas is fortunate to be great for wind energy and also great for solar energy. And we're unique in another way. We have our own grid in Texas, ERCOT. There are 3 grids in the United States, Eastern, Western, and ERCOT. We do our own thing, and we've done pretty well with that as far as bringing in renewable energy. All the way back in 2025, our legislature passed some laws that created some so-called energy zones out here in West Texas that we decided would be good for windmills. During the teens, we spent $7 million and we built 3,600 miles of high voltage lines, and we built a bunch of windmills out in West Texas. And so we have been now for several years moving as much power from West Texas to where it's used in the cities over here at an amount that equals the entire state of Colorado. Just with this C-Res and what we've done here, we're providing electricity that equals this total Colorado. All that, well, certainly virtually all of that is renewable energy. And we're doing more of the same right now. We're building wires and we're adding more renewables, and we're going to do even more. Okay, here's how Texas compares. In terms of supply or production, we're twice the next state. There we are, and there's Florida, they're number 2. So we make more electricity by double than any other state does. We're also leading in renewable energy. We passed California this year with respect to solar, and we've been way ahead of them for wind for a long time. So there's 2024 renewable energy in Texas, and there's California, which is by far the second best state, and not many other states have done very much yet at all regarding renewable energy. The vast majority of it is coming from Texas and California. And when you look at prices, we've got a pretty good story to tell there too. We are near the low end of the price. We're less than half of the electricity price in California. Some states, like Iowa, for example, that uses a lot more percentage of wind than we're able to get, has a little bit better. But we're high in supply and low in price, and we'd like to stay there. Here's the story of how we got there. This is Texas power generation, 2027 until today, and these are the various sources. That's natural gas. We've grown in natural gas. Our nuclear has been unchanged basically over that whole period of time. We started to bring in some wind, and now we're bringing in some solar. And by bringing in these renewables, it has allowed us to decrease the coal. We're nearly half the coal that we used to be. So the direction on all of those is in the right direction. We just need to keep doing more of the same. But there are some challenges with renewables, and they're intermittent. You know, the sun doesn't shine at night, nor on a cloudy day, and the wind doesn't always blow. And so you have to be able to deal with that, particularly during these peak demand periods, and especially when you have an extended winter storm that might last for 2 or 3 days. Used to be our big issue was a hot summer afternoon. Solar and batteries have really helped out a lot there. But our big issue continuing is going to be winter storms. They're intermittent, and so what to do on a cloudy, calm day or during peak demands. Those are our challenges with renewables. This is a picture of that peak demand day that we had, which was August the 10th of 2 years ago. We haven't had a higher day for demand since then. This is the entire day from midnight to midnight of power production in ERCOT coming from these different sources. And so you can see on that day of peak demand, which is right up there, we had decent solar at that time. We had really good wind, thank goodness. Because if it had been a calm day, we'd have been in a heap of trouble. We did not have any shortages. We made it through, barely. And the reason we did is because we had an awful lot of natural gas to keep us going during that day. Now, just in the 2 years since then, we have added a lot of new solar and a lot of new batteries. And here's an example. This is still a year and a half ago, but it's an example of what I call a good and a bad day for renewables all in the same day. And on this day, you can see that we had pretty good wind and solar, and at noon, we were more than 50% of our demand was made from wind and solar. You say, that's great. Well, the sun went down and the wind died down, and by 8 o'clock, we were less than 5% from renewables. We were maxed out on nuclear, we were maxed out on coal. Fortunately, we had enough natural gas to keep us going without outages. And so this right here really is a picture of our biggest issue that we've got to figure out a way to deal with. This is where we are now. This is last week ago today. This is Monday a week ago. We added more solar, we added more batteries. During the middle of the day a week ago, you can see solar, you can see wind. We were making 70% of what we need from renewables. That's wonderful. Then, of course, the sun set. And fortunately, the wind picked up, so we didn't need to add a lot more natural gas. And you can see the batteries right there. Those batteries were not anywhere near necessary to supply the power. We had plenty of gas that we could have brought in if we wanted to. What happens is, during this period, we've got a bunch of gas that's shut down because we don't need it, and those gas plants choose not to start up just to run for 3 or 4 hours and have to shut back down again. So they elect not to start up, and they give the demand to batteries during that period of time, and it all works out well on a day like this. But again, we got a lot of batteries. We have more batteries than California does, and they're good for a few hours, but they are not good for several days, and they might never be good for several days either. It just takes too many of them. All right, switching a little bit on ERCOT's forecast. This is their latest demand forecast. Here's where we've been, and there's where we're supposed to be going. Doubling in 5 years. That is an unbelievable forecast. It's mostly coming from the AI data centers, some from Bitcoin mining, but primarily this is your AI data center demand. It's a huge demand. We're going to have to find $30 billion to spend on the wires just to make this happen. I don't know where that's coming from. ERCOT's looking at this, and they are not yet saying, oh yeah, that's gonna be easy. What they're saying is that we're gonna work on it, but they're also saying that as soon as next summer, we might be getting a little tight on our summertime supply. And they're not even talking about what happens when you get out into here. And so here is another picture of the next couple of years. This is the Department of Energy's forecast for ERCOT. That's 2024, and they say that by 2025, Texas is going to be up 7% from 2024, and that's about accurate. We're about that much greater now than we were last year. They also say that in one more year, by 2026, we're going to be up here 23% more than back here. The rest of the United States might show a 5% increase. So a bunch of the AI action is happening in Texas, and we have a challenge as to how we can provide that much electricity. It's a significant challenge. Here's ERCOT's current projection for what that growth looks like. This is solar, and that's wind, and that's gas. And so we have added a lot of solar this year. We're currently projecting a lot more solar to be added next year, and still a fair amount in 2027. There is a little wind that's in the growth forecast, and not much natural gas, and that's a problem. And we're also going to be bringing in lots more batteries, and that'll help again in that period after sundown for a few hours, but it won't help during a long winter storm. And one of the biggest, and as you well know, we just ended the tax credits for wind and solar beginning in 2028. So they're still in effect for the next 2 years. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because you might have been reading in the news, but everybody says that unsubsidized solar is now cheaper than natural gas to build new units for. I hope that's true, and maybe if it is true, we'll still see some more growth in solar after that. That remains to be seen. Excuse me. The real issue that I see is, going back to those charts that shows when you add all this solar, in 2 years, this is going to be double. And so what is that going to do? It's going to push natural gas and coal off the bottom of the chart. And you might say that's great, but if you need that gas over here, how are these people going to stay in business if they have to shut down in the middle of the day? They can't make any money if they don't run. So I worry about having enough natural gas capacity to be able to have them financially able to operate, because we have to have them during this period of time. Okay, here's the biggest challenges as I see it. Rapid demand growth, we talked about that. We need to be able to build more natural gas capacity. We've got lots of issues with transmission even today, and with all this growth, we've got to figure out how to put a lot more new wires across the state to connect up with. Always, we like to keep our low prices, and that's not going to be easy as we go forward. Some things have happened in the legislature 2 years ago and again this year. Nothing happened this year that's going to do any way restricting more renewable power and batteries. We did a few things around helping out the prospects for nuclear. We caused a development fund that's got $350 million to help develop these small reactors. But the biggest thing we did, and some important things, were relative to these new, large, let's think about AI data centers, these new large facilities that use electricity. There's been some issue with them putting themselves in a forecast saying, yeah, we want to build this data center, we want to build that data center. And ERCOT can't figure out what's wishful thinking and what's the truth, and they need to know so they can plan. So some of the things we did this year were pointed at trying to make those AI data centers be more honest with their forecasts of what they want to build so we can effectively plan for it. But the most significant thing that we did this year is we passed a law that says that when these new AI data centers are built, if they have backup power, ERCOT can tell them to turn it on anytime they need to. And even more importantly than that, if we're looking tomorrow to have a real shortage of electricity and we're afraid we're going to run out, ERCOT now has the ability to tell the data center, you've got to shut down. We can't have you taking power tomorrow. We need that power available for other people. So that just happened in our legislature this past year. We're the first state to do it. A lot of other states, you read the news, they're kind of envious of us, and maybe they'll look at doing the same thing. But that's a big deal to preserve reliability going down the road. We've formed an energy fund. We've said it's to make low interest 3% loans. We call it dispatchable power. That means natural gas, basically. And so think about this as a pot full of money that we're willing to loan at 3% to any company who wants to build a natural gas generator in Texas. It had $7 billion last year. We just added 5. We're going to add 4 more next year. So we got a pretty good sized pot of money. So far, we've only had 3 companies that have taken advantage of that for 3 relatively small plants in the greater Houston area. They have some others that they're looking at, but so far, that's not very big, really. There's a big pile of money, and ERCOT and others are hoping that somebody takes it, and we'll see if that happens. Okay, what to do if you have a crunch and there's no more power available? And the first thing you do is you pay somebody to reduce their use. We did that. You remember during Uri, but you remember in the peak demand in August of 2023 that I showed you? We paid some Bitcoin miners to shut down. They were happy to take $32 million, and that's not all we owe them. We owe them another $89 million that we've got, we're going to pay out over time. So the way to do that is you can pay a lot of money to somebody to shut down. We've done that, and we're prepared to do it again if we absolutely have to. The question now is, why don't we offer the same thing to us, to residential and other commercials? If you're willing to cut back and shut down, we'll give you some money for it. So that's a question. And here's a really big question. If it's 110 degrees outside and we're about to run out of power, would we like ERCOT to be able to have control of our thermostat and jack it up to 85 to save power? I'm not sure, but that could well be coming in the future. The other thing that I'm convinced, nobody likes this, but at some point in time, I think we're going to have to get used to occasional rolling blackouts. I just don't see how we can put everything together to always avoid that. That's just an opinion thing. All right, what to do? Again, here's Jim's opinion slide. We need more generation, we need more solar, we need more wind, we need more batteries, and we really need more natural gas and more transmission lines in the next few years. Longer term, it's go nuclear. And hopefully we can do that. It might be 10, 15, 20 years down the road, but if we can ever do that, then we'll be able to shut down coal first and finally get rid of natural gas. But that's probably not going to happen for a couple of decades after we really get much bigger in the nuclear. Another opinion slide. This is my public perception of where we are in this country today. We have some people, I'm calling them Pollyannas, and they're looking down a yellow brick road at this wonderful Wizard of Oz down here, and they're seeing lots of wind and solar, and it's all going to be wonderful. I think that a lot more people are beginning to see a dose of reality, like I hope I've pointed out today, And that doesn't mean we can't get there. I think we will. But that road is going to be a lot more tougher, and it's not paved with yellow bricks. And we finally get there, there'll be plenty of wind and plenty of solar. There'll also be a whole lot of nuclear, probably a little natural gas, and a bunch of batteries and wires, and maybe some rolling outages every so often. Here's another big question for all of us. Can we change our culture of affluence? We love big cars, we love big houses, those all take energy. And you all have heard that we need to stop, we can't grow cattle anymore because it produces greenhouse gas. I'm not sure if Westminster's ready to take that fillet off the menu from the rolling just yet, but at some point in time, people are going to start talking about that. All right, here's where our government thinks we're going. This is the Department of Energy and Renewable Energy Labs forecast for 2050. They say we're not going to make net zero, but we're going to make good progress. They think that by 2050, 50% of our power is going to come from wind and solar, basically, and water, and 30% from nuclear, and 20% from others like natural gas. They're predicting that all the cars will be electric by then. And in order to do that, we've got to build a whole lot more power generation. We've got to start to change our lifestyles. They agree with me that we're going to have to accept some rolling blackouts every once in a while during those winter storms. And they'll tell you when you can run your washing machine, when you can run your dishwasher, when to charge your electric car. They'll tell you when you can do that. And they might also grab control of your thermostat and adjust it to where they think it needs to be on those days. So this is another tongue-in-cheek kind of a map, and that's interesting perspective. The international goal that you've all read about is we want to hold global warming to less than 2 degrees C. So if you live in Austin and you don't like 2 degrees C, move to Dallas. It's cooler in Dallas. Or you can stay in Austin and you can go green and you can go nuclear, and you can buy yourself an EV, and you can add more wind and gas and all that, and there will be. So there's my story.
Would you be kind enough to give us a little comfort and tell us about what Westminster is going to do?
John asked about what Westminster's going to do. They've already done a big thing, and that is to put solar on the roof. It's on the Windsor working, it's on the Carlisle working. It was on Preston, and the city didn't like it, so that's never going to happen. But we're now making, I think it's about 10% of the power that we need from our wind and solar. So that's the first big thing we're going to do. I don't know of anything else that we're specifically doing.
Talk about generators.
Oh, generators. Thank you. Yeah, after phase 4 is completed, we will have a generator on each of our 3 buildings that is sufficient for the power for that building. Right now, the Carlisle's generator can run the Carlisle. The Windsor generator can run a part of Windsor, and there's not much in the Preston. But what we're doing is we're taking the Windsor generator, upgrading it, putting it at the Preston, and it will be able to handle all of the Preston. And we're going to buy a brand new generator for the Windsor that can provide all of that. So in a year or so from now, we will have sufficient generator capacity to provide all the power.
7 days.
Except for 7 days, which ought to be plenty. And it's natural gas and diesel. So within 7 days, anyway, we ought to be in good shape a year from now.
Don't move to Dallas.
We don't have to move to Dallas. Yes, question here.
Where are we going to use some batteries? And how we put them together so they'll collect our electricity not only here, but in other neighborhoods?
you can do that. Some homes are doing that now, but from a cost and a practicality standpoint, the current batteries that we have just don't make economic sense to try to do that. Plus, we don't have to because we're using all the power we make. We don't have any extra to store. There may be some of that coming in the future. That's what the best battery application are the big batteries on the grid scale. That's the most effective way to use batteries to help, not on houses or neighborhoods, although there might be some of that. Roger?
Jim, I haven't heard you say much about the impact of air travel and how that, if it's a great impact, air travel's going up. Are you foreseeing electric planes?
Roger's asking about air travel, and he asked about, are we seeing electric planes? And I don't think anybody is seeing electric planes. There are some people who are thinking about hydrogen-driven planes in the future, but that's way down the road if it ever happens. Lee?
Your charts about the next 5 years show huge demand.
Yes.
And you also say it's going to be 5 years before any of those small nuclear power.
Yes.
So I don't see how you get into there.
Neither do I. Lee, did you hear Lee? He was wondering about that huge demand chart for the next 5 years, and the statement that we won't be getting much more nuclear until after then. And he wonders how we get to there, and it's going to be a massive challenge. And you know, we can see into next year, and maybe 2027, but we're already seeing some issues in those years. I don't know about 28 and 29. These AI companies, you read the news, I mean, they've already bought out all of the big natural gas turbine generators. They're sold out until 2030. Can't even buy any more of those. But they're buying used jet engines, and they're going to convert those. They're buying some reciprocating. They're doing anything they can do to get power. And the price of that power apparently isn't that much of an issue. They just have to have power for AI data centers, and they're willing to get it any way they can get it. So I don't know, but it's an important question, and I don't think there's a good answer for it right now. Bob?
A few years ago, I read that we had a fair amount of power generated in West Texas that we couldn't get to market because of the lack of transmission capability. I wonder if that problem has been alleviated to any extent.
Yeah, the CRS things that I showed you with all those wires, that did alleviate it. Now, the biggest issue right now is not West Texas, but it's South Texas. We did not anticipate that there would be a lot of wind energy generated in South Texas, and so we did not include any wire expansion in that CRES project. And now we've built a bunch of windmills down around below Corpus and around Brownsville, and we have problems right now getting that power into the grid. We get it as far as San Antonio, but we can't get past San Antonio. We've got a several $1 billion project working that'll get around, but the issue of transmission continues to be a major issue. But most of the earlier concerns about West Texas, we've solved that. Yes?
Yeah, nuclear, there's an awful lot of rods in the basements of nuclear reactors. Is there a nuclear reprocessing plant? Because there isn't one in the United States now.
There are a couple of small nuclear reprocessing plants now, not anywhere near what we need. Most of the used rods are just stored on the site that they were used at. So this whole country is full of used nuclear rods. Now, there are a couple of companies that are in the middle of building facilities to do that recycling. That needs to happen. I think it's going to happen based on what I've seen, but it's going to be a little while yet. But that has to be ultimately a part of the nuclear equation. but we're not there yet. Kathy?
You may have covered this in a previous presentation. The small nuclear reactors, are there multiple manufacturers of those? And I'm thinking about sources. And does that require, are there water issues?
Kathy asked about these small reactors. Is anybody making them now? And what about their water consumption issues? The answer is nobody's making them now. There are several companies that are moving to get into that business. The closest one is called NewScale. They've got a certified design, and they're just looking for customers, but they're not making them yet. Several other companies have said they're going that way and appear to be spending tons of money, but are 2 or 3 years away from being able to produce them. One of them, Alo Atomics, is here in Austin. We have one in Austin that wants to be making them. And as far, let me see, what was the second part of your question?
Water use.
Water use. The majority of these new reactors don't need big cooling water. Some of them will use a little water, but a lot of them are air cooled. It kind of depends on the circumstance, but they do not appear to be huge water users like some of the other things are. Now, the data centers are a whole other issue. A big data center takes a lot of, this one that's going in Taylor by Samsung, they're going to, I guess doing it, they're going to drill groundwater, pump a whole bunch of groundwater for cooling. And the groundwater is apparently there. So the water consumption, Milam County.
Yeah.
The big water consumptions issues are going to be with the data centers, not the nuclear reactors. Kathy?
Is any of Austin's power coming from nuclear now?
Austin owns 16% of the South Texas nuclear project.
Right. I
We've
just
been
didn't
trying to
see
dump
that.
it for years and years, and
Yeah.
we can't do it.
Well, we don't want to.
I wasn't seeing any of that on your chart.
No, I didn't show it. We own 16% of South Texas.
I thought so.
During Winter Storm Uri and a
Yeah.
couple of these others,
Yeah.
nobody wanted to talk about it, but boy, we were really delighted we had them.
Yeah,
It saved our bacon not only on supply, but cost as well.
right.
Well, a long run, I still think a Stanley's different, because I think, did you ever take into consideration of going from 1 billion to 8 billion now, and maybe going up to 10 or 11 billion? But I don't think that's really gonna be sustainable even with all as it keeps on, and if it crashes, it may be a lot of deaths and even suicides, worldwide wars, and people just seeing everything going. And how did we get here? So I still support that, and
John's got a lot of concerns about where we're going and some of these things we talked about, and his concerns are maybe valid. These are big issues.
it is, but it's gonna be a long range
It is.
issue
Late,
though.
So, you mentioned several possibilities for what Texas might have to do about controlling washing machines and air conditioners, whatever, but that also takes some lead time to be able to implement that.
Oh, yes. I don't frankly know how they're gonna do that, but that's what they say they have to do. I mean, how are they gonna tell you when you can turn your dishwasher on? But anyway, I would guess it's gonna be not forced, but, okay, here's the rules, please follow them.
Well,
And it's-
we live in Northern Virginia, and the Michigan Power was making arrangements. Most people didn't take them up on it, but they promised you lower electricity rates if you let them control your air conditioning.
Sure.
Well,
Oh,
your
absolutely.
dishwasher, whatever, but they had, they could drive around or.
They're-
They could remotely control your air conditioning.
There are companies in Houston, and probably other places, I haven't seen them in Austin yet, but there are companies who are already offering that service. You can buy a service, and they say, we'll supply your power, but we're gonna have some control over it, and it's gonna give you a lower price. So that's available in some places already. I'm not aware that that's offered in Austin yet, but I wouldn't doubt that it will be. Stuart?
The question I have is, why did we not avail ourselves of French nuclear devices. I mean, they run their whole, 80% of their country's power is nuclear, and they may have had one incident. Do you have any idea why?
Our technology is just as good as France is, so that
They have-
we didn't need their technology, we just needed a desire to build them. And we,
Okay.
after 3 Mile Island, we said, no more, and that ended it. It's not a technology issue.
But they had a reprocessing, Rod, that.
Oh, yeah, no, they have,
We shut ours down because it was contaminated.
they have a reprocessing, it doesn't handle everything they make, but they have had for quite a while now, they have a reprocessing facility. And Stuart's right, they make it 70%, but they've kind of thumbed their nose at Germany and others for a long time,
Because it's cold.
saying, we're going nuclear, we don't have as much coal as you do, and so we're going nuclear, and they've done it, they've been quite successful.
Their
Okay.
population's not increasing so much too, that's the bad thing, but worldwide it can affect you. If we get to 10 or 11 billion and try to sustain, in a crash you may have to go down to 4 billion, 2 billion. So that could be happening to some in the next century. And I've heard many people, by the way, in an article in the paper, are now considering, how much should I have? Maybe should I not have any or not more than 1 or 2? This younger generation is looking at that.
Thank you, Jim.
John's got a lot of concerns.